Hello everyone, welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie. My name is Tucker Hazel. Today, I'm joined by a couple of my entangled co-hosts, Tanner Dykstra and Iman Buter. Today, we're here to talk about the latest and greatest of the MCU. This is the Marvels. We're here to talk about it and give you our thoughts, but if you have seen this movie, unlikely, as it seems, the pre-sales and the tickets and the people we saw at the theater, unlikely that you've seen it, but on the off chance, and you want to talk to us about it, you can join our Discord. The link is in the description. And while you're down there, subscribe and like the channel. I'm not even going to tell you to comment. You don't do it anyway. So Tanner, Abram, the Marvels.
Whatever.
Doesn't matter.
We
Marvel.
switched. We used our powers
Whoa.
at the same time.
Look at that.
Yeah, we did. Who wants to go first?
I want Abram to start.
I think the movie's stupid.
Oh.
I don't know what to say. I forgot every. Well, we watched something an hour ago. I forget every plot point. The movie's incomprehensible. It's sometimes fun, but it's not even worth our time to talk about. I just.
All right, see you guys. See you,
That's
everybody.
it. Goodbye. 2 stars. No. In reality, I think there's some really nice chemistry, particularly between Iman and Vellani and any of the various wooden actresses she's in the frame with.
Okay.
But there's a lot of cool ideas here and a lot of great starting points. But ultimately, none of them are followed through on. I think that the plot is largely meaningless. And I just find myself, again, wondering why we even bother. And that's kind of my very blunt way to put it. I just watch it and I forget it. It's like putting paper in a paper shredder.
Okay. Yeah.
For the moment that it's in the shredder, there's a connection.
It's interesting. You get to see it come apart.
Yeah, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts on the
Tanner?
Marvels.
The conversation around the Marvels has been, people, I'll say maybe unfairly, sort of preying on his downfall, let's say. Sort of giddily talking about, its box office projections and the Rotten Tomato meter and what have you. And
It's fresh now.
It's fresh now.
For
Well,
now.
actually, I think it's at 59 last time we checked.
It's a fight.
It's a fight. And I'll be honest, I was partaking in that, slightly. But as I sat down and the commercials were winding down, I was like, I'm going to do my best to leave that out of my head and try to like this movie. Because, we can make our assuasions about the MCU, but by and large, I like these movies. I have a fun time with them, and I'm going to give a fair shot to the Marvels. And I was liking it for maybe the first 20 minutes. There was the issue.
Very strong.
There was the occasional issue. And as it went on, I was like, oh, there wasn't a thread to begin with. I thought we were losing the thread, but eventually I was like, there was no thread. There just happened to be some scenes at the beginning that I liked, and a couple scenes in the middle that I liked. But by and large, as a whole product, it's a mess. It doesn't work.
It's an unraveling thread as we're going through it. But I still like the movie. I mean, the honest to God truth is I had a gigantic smile on my face the entire fucking time. I was getting to see characters that I enjoyed, banter back and forth, sci-fi concepts, things going crazy. And because I'm such in the mindset of, I just love when things are wacky and sci-fi and crazy, it made sense to me. The problem becomes when you are looking at it critically in terms of pacing, in terms of character arcs, in terms of the setups and payoffs that are ostensibly non-existent. It becomes hard to justify it being a fun time to watch being worth $250 million.
I think it's $275 actually.
God, a lot of money to produce, years of people's lives working on this, and there's just something missing here. They clearly cut things. They clearly rewrote things as things were going on. It's way too short. And that is the real main criticism I'm going to levy against this movie, is because I think there are a lot of ideas in there, as you were talking about, that are interesting. There's a lot of fun moments. There is great chemistry. I love these characters. But when you talk about this film's issues, it moves at such a fast pace that you're constantly losing your footing. Okay, it's already got a crazy, crazy entangled concept. Characters are switching places. But then we are never given time to figure that out, to breathe, to explain these ideas, to introduce a villain, to introduce these backstories that are going to set up and pay off. It's all in service of, we need to get to the next scene, and there's no time to stop and figure things out. And that is because the movie is 90 fucking minutes long. We are missing the interstitial scenes here. We're missing the things that attach this together. But I still do think most of those individual scenes are fun in and of themselves. But I think once you stitch them together and look for what is stitching them together, you realize it doesn't come together as a whole.
Yeah, I think this is a YouTube movie. And what I mean by that is
it works very well if you're watching the movie clips playlist on YouTube, the Marvels musical dance sequence, 8 out of 15 or whatever.
The same way that I go rewatch the heist and shoot it from Heat.
Yeah.
I want to go back and watch a couple particular scenes in this movie, but I think it really is ultimately emblematic of the fact that this movie was chopped to shit.
Yeah.
And there's like another movie on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, and that's what's frustrating because ultimately my cynicism about these movies can be dissolved by just some really great characters having fun. Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite MCU movie, and that's a film with not a very complicated plot, not a particularly strong villain, but its character...
Actually, very similar villain.
Yeah, very similar villain. But it's characters that are fun and have great camaraderie, and that carries the movie. And to be clear, in case this review ends up in the algorithm... I love the Captain Marvel show, Miss Marvel show, and the Captain Marvel movie.
Yeah. Two of my favorite MCU things.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both, which is why I think it's more disappointing than ever that the movie ended up being the mess that it was. Because ultimately, this movie has so much jargon, but so little justification for it. I wish we could have had
You need a little J for your J.
A little J.
J and J. All right, yeah.
If we could have just had a much simpler movie with those two characters and Monica Rambeau, who I also like, she's never been anywhere before, really.
No, she was a main part of WandaVision.
Yeah, okay, whatever. I didn't watch WandaVision.
Yeah, good show.
Good show.
I think that you could have, and you should have just said, look, there's a fun relationship here, because the best parts of the film is when they are just hanging out.
Yeah.
But instead, we're sort of enmeshed in this universe of quantum holes and jump points and Florgans and Nick Furies, and I just don't think that it's comprehensible. The film goes out of its way to beat you over the head with the fact that don't worry about it. They switch places when they use their powers. Don't worry about it. But for me, that's just not good enough when there's so many scenes of just nonsensical exposition about like anti-gravity doorways. I just don't think that works.
Sure. Well, I think that, we can get into it as much as we want to, but I think there's a lot of elements of this movie that what Tucker had mentioned.
Yeah.
Your base level, what you need to craft a good film is just not here. Yeah. And I think we should talk about the team, the Marvels, as they call themselves, actually.
Mostly Kamala says it, and then someone else randomly says it. Like, I don't even know how
on the singing planet.
Yes,
they call them the Marvels. How they know that, I don't know.
Which one do we want to start with? Do we want to start with Carol? Kamala.
Well, I think Carol's the most interesting part of this movie because she almost feels the least served. By the character writing here. Yeah. I love the first Captain Marvel movie. I saw the movie 4 times in theaters. It's one of my favorite MCU movies. And Carol's dry sense of humor, I thought, really carried that film. I think what she loses here is the sense of being alone and against the world that she was in that first movie. She was like tentatively working with Nick Fury. I think that made her feel distinct. But Brie Larson and the writing for Carol Danvers in this movie is trying to straddle this line of her dealing with being a loner, but then also being a part of the team. And that is an interesting conflict to have. This character that is incredibly powerful and has been on her own for decades at this point, trying to come to terms with being a member of a team. But that conflict is relatively quickly resolved. And when it is conflicting, it's like a line or two. And so she just feels like kind of the rotten egg in the group. It's like, okay, I like these other characters.
Folks. Brie Larson is a rotten egg. No. Sorry. We don't want to end up in the wrong algorithms here.
And her role in the plot is as the thing that everyone else centers around, but she is not a interestingly enough written core to this movie to make it feel like, oh, I know why everything else is connected to this.
I have long felt, especially about the first Captain Marvel film and carrying over into this one. Gotta get some hydration here.
A couple seconds at Endgame.
That the writers at Marvel aren't sure what to do with her character.
Yeah.
They don't have it completely figured out. They don't know what role she's supposed to fill on any given team or group that she's in. And we don't resolve that issue here.
No.
And we might even walk it back a couple of steps, frankly, because we put her on a team now, and her role is... question mark. Her role is kind of just whatever this scene
there's not really
needs.
roles, and frankly, there's not enough people to have roles.
That's fair. That's
to be
fair.
100% honest.
But like, you know, you have like the what's interesting is you kind of have two characters, Monica and Kamala, who are both like figuring things out, and then Carol, I guess, was supposed to be like the mentor figure, but they never figured out that dynamic at all. They never flesh out that dynamic.
No.
They have a fun, as Tucker mentioned, maybe the best scene in the movie, the training sequence.
Yeah.
That's like really fun and, you know, sort of kinetic and well edited and everything like that. We have a fun little Beastie Boys song underneath that. But when it's time to get to the nitty gritty of writing this dynamic, it completely falls flat.
Ultimately, the problem is that when you're plotting a character arc, you need more than 2 points.
Okay.
Because otherwise you just end up plotting a
Character
line.
line.
That's a line, yeah.
The issue is this is a film that, because it is, to your point, Tucker, so short, so much has to just be told to the audience.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And sometimes, interestingly, things just aren't told to the audience at all.
Yeah.
There's this conflict with Captain Marvel's backstory
Yeah.
that...
Well, her not actual backstory, her backstory to this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In between the events of Captain Marvel 2019 and The Marvels 2023, something happened.
Yeah, and so the resolution is largely characters absolving her of guilt.
Uh-huh.
Or Kamala Khan's a really interesting example, to where a lot of what Captain Marvel learns about herself or how she should act comes from very specific and very pointed lines of dialogue Iman Vellani has to deliver to give some sort of meaning to the character arcs. Because there's no time for Brie Larson to reflect on really anything.
No, God no.
Other than when we have to careen into a ridiculous like shot reverse shot conversation over like fixing a part of a ship.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I just think that that's ultimately the problem here. You're right. There's really interesting character ideas, but then they have no time to be serviced.
Yeah, and the training sequence where they're testing their entangled powers, I think, is the crux of why this movie works and why this movie doesn't work. Is it's starting with the bad. Is that scene in a vacuum is very good, as I will get to, and for multiple reasons. But the fact that it is happening that quickly after them not quite knowing if they can work together and actually having a point of conflict where Carol's like digging into Monica's memories and she's not comfortable with that. It's like, okay, that's a point of character conflict.
Yeah.
I would like to see teased out. But then we switch. And that is what is so weird about this movie. Not only is it literally thematically about them switching places and all that, which leads to some of the best elements of the movie, but it has to switch on a dime between emotional highs and lows so quickly that there's no setup and payoff and ebb and flow into these moments.
The tonal shifts are so incredibly harsh in this film.
Yeah.
And it stems out of them just having no earthly time to explore the characters because we are so bogged down in this nothing plot. It's incredible that I'm of two minds about this. That we, at the same time, could any of us recount like the plot of this movie, like what the villain's plan is?
I think it's really easy. You want me to do it?
Sure, go for it, Tucker.
The villain,
Darben.
Your favorite name to say, your favorite character.
I love it.
Is a woman from Hala, a Cree woman whose homeworld has lost all its resources due to a civil war.
Yeah,
and she wants to fix that by siphoning resources from other planets.
Yeah.
I just don't think that that's good enough, though, because the movie wants it to be so much more than that.
Absolutely.
That's
there are themes there that could be interesting. Again, if played out in, frankly, a longer film with more time to develop these things about the fact that there's like interplanetary conflict and intergroup conflict about where are we spending our resources? Who are we like letting go to the wayside by diverting resources elsewhere? These ideas are planted, but the movie does not have time to wrestle with them because every time Darben has to do something, it happens, and it's like, and then we have to move somewhere else because the plot demands it to be so.
I think that's the case, but I mean, I don't think this is a movie about anything.
No.
It doesn't. The movie doesn't give a fuck about resources. It doesn't give a fuck about dispossessed people. None of that matters. What the movie cares about...
It wants to.
Yeah, what the movie cares about is it cares about jump points, and it cares about anti-gravity dimension holes and everything. And that's the problem. This is not a simple plot. Or, well, put it this way. The mechanics of the plot are simple, but they're in this ridiculous framework.
Sure.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
To the point where I get confused as a viewer and start to think, okay, so I'm still over here, right? I'm still trying to figure out what a jump point is, but you're over here. And the only like connective tissue is the characters in the film explicitly saying, don't worry about anything we're saying here, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not effective writing. That's an admission of the fact that what you're telling the audience doesn't make sense. So the best you can do is tell them not to worry about it. And I don't think that makes me want to learn more about your world, get more invested in it. What it makes me want to do is disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Kamala.
Yeah.
Kamala is... Oh, hello.
We got our friend here.
A little flirkin here. You might have heard her earlier.
I don't know if Mike picked it up, to be honest.
We'll have to find out. Kamala is really fun.
Yeah, she's really good.
Kamala is the best part of this movie. Basically, everyone, every review, every blurb, or whatever I've read agrees with this.
Yeah.
Is because Iman Vellani, and we said this about the Miss Marvel show, a show that we all really, really love.
We really do.
She gets the character.
The last show we reviewed?
Yeah.
The last Marvel show we reviewed.
Yeah. She gets the character, she gets the tone, she gets the vibe, she understands the assignment in many ways.
Well, I think also the fact is that Kamala is given the most interesting character points in this movie. Her family is a big part of this film in terms of the way that they're interacting with her, the way that they're in the background of scenes, and their dynamic carries perfectly over from the Ms. Marvel show, where they were all fantastic and they're all great here. And the fact that Kamala has this reverence for Captain Marvel, and she's getting to meet her hero and be forced into these situations and be pushed to be a stronger hero and learn about the pros and cons that come with being pushed into these crazy scenarios, that is interesting for her. And she plays it well, and her personality and sense of humor work for these sequences that are on the whole funny and creative and poppy and quick, which meshes with Kamala Khan's personality.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't necessarily for Carol Danvers.
Or for Monica Rambeau.
Yeah.
I mean, Iman Vellani just also is having fun. Nobody else is having fun.
Yeah.
And this is just sort of an issue with a lot of modern blockbuster filmmaking anyway, but everybody has to be above the material. Or everybody has to be like pushing back against the inherent silliness of a scene, right? So when we go to a planet and everybody's singing and dancing, it's not fun watching Brie Larson be told to act like she's above it. It's fun watching Iman Vellani dance alongside with them.
Yeah.
Or for fucking Teyonah Parris, Monica Rambeau to be like, this is pretty weird, isn't it, guys? And Iman Vellani's right there next to her, like, dancing and singing and laughing, and that's what the character is, but she's just much more engrossing to watch in that moment, because that's what the audience should be doing. The audience shouldn't be saying, this is pretty wacky, isn't it, everybody? No, we should be having fun with the characters instead of questioning it.
And that's the other thing. And to be clear, Brie Larson is not very good in the film, but I don't think it's Brie Larson's fault, ultimately. Yeah. I think the vast majority of problems with this film do come back to the script.
Yeah.
And I think you can attribute it to it being too short, whatever, but also at a certain point, it's possible to make a 90-minute movie.
Absolutely.
Many people do.
I think it's possible to make a 90-minute movie, but not a 90-minute movie with this many characters and this many sci-fi concepts. I think that is really the where the like sandpaper meets the sandpaper, and not a great way. They're kind of like flatten each other out.
Yeah, we're just taking the grain off of both.
Exactly. Is that I like these ideas. I like these characters, and frankly, for the first bit of the movie, before it becomes clear that the entanglement is a big part of the plot, but not a big part of the screen time of the film. I'm like, this is a gimmick superhero movie, but that's cool. Yeah. That sets this apart. The idea of the characters not being able to use their powers because they're always switching and having that impact the fights in different ways and impact the editing and impact the pacing in different ways. I'm like, this is making this movie feel really fresh. The first fight sequence we get where they're all switching places is really, really cool.
It's really, really good.
And then we never approach
No.
anything like that
No.
in the filmmaking in the ensuing 85 minutes or whatever.
Because, and as I was discussing as we left the theater, the entanglement starts off as everything that this movie has going for it. The first 20 minutes are just chopping around and everyone's confused and it's got a ton of momentum. It's very weird. And that's when I was like, this is a gimmick, but I like it and that makes it very distinct.
Yeah.
But that goes steadily downwards across the course of the film. We get that, then we get the training sequence, which is, again, as Tanner said, I said, the best part of the movie, where the three of them are having a ton of fun together. And even Carol and Monica are having fun with it, and they're swapping places while they're tossing food in the air and catching in the other person's mouth. Like, that is really creative. You cannot see this be done in any other movie. All three of them are having so much fun with it. It's where the chemistry is at its highest. But that's kind of the last sequence that revolves around them swapping, because they've learned to control it by that point. And what that means is that they can kind of just use their powers as they want.
Yep.
And so when we get the fight on the water planet and the final fight, which is easily the worst fight in the movie, they're not swapping.
No.
They're kind of just fighting alongside each other. But I really thought
what it has to result in naturally, because they switch when they use their powers at the same time. What it naturally results in is that none of them are fighting at the same time.
Yeah, they have to take turns.
They have to take turns.
Yeah.
Which is what you want to see in a team-up movie. Is everyone taking turns.
It could have been really cool to have them continue that entanglement stuff to where they're using, like, basically wombo combo powers where they're swapping places. And they do that occasionally, where they're like, hey, Monica, switch now. And, then Carol will come in with a super punch that the other villain doesn't know is coming. It's like, okay, that's the cool part
You
of
could
this
chop
combat.
off two of my fingers and I could be able to count on one hand how many times it happens.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, again, I like the character Captain Marvel a lot, so I like seeing Brie Larson kick ass. I just think it's fun.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's not particularly inspired past that first sequence. But again, it's worth noting that first sequence, from its editing to its choreography to its sense of humor, is wonderful, because it's not only the three leads fighting, but it is
Nick Fury and Kamala's family.
Yeah, it's really great, and it best sort of exemplifies this concept when it works. But I think the reality is that it's a nothing movie, and so. What?
Well, here's the thing.
What are they supposed to do?
I think the problem is it is something, and that's why, even though I like this movie, I'm disappointed in it. Is because this gimmick and the fact they were able to make that opening sequence as fresh and interesting as it is, for the 40th time I've seen an opening superhero fight sequence. I've never seen anything like that. And that is an idea. That is something. That is something that is fresh, that is creative, that takes an interesting creative vision to deliver. And they delivered that one sequence, and they delivered a couple other sequences like it. And I think there are, again, to this movie's credit, sequences with ideas that are interesting. The outside of the first fight and the training montage, which we've talked about, I think that the Flurkin sequence and the dancing planet are both very interesting ideas in and of themselves.
So I think this is where sort of we're coming at it from different angles. Is that, yes, I agree, and I like those sequences in a bottle, but like, you need to have deeper ideas than that for a movie.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is that like when I say this movie is not, or when like everyone, when I say this movie is nothing, it doesn't really have anything to operate with. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about like deeper themes that like make it a holistic product and not just 3 or 4 fun scenes that are strung together.
No, absolutely. And I think that, again, that comes from this movie being too short. I think the problem is that we jump from that scene to that scene without having anything to build the themes and character relationships and progress in between them.
Of course.
Because every big fun movie has that crazy sequence with the one gimmick that you remember, and that makes it very distinct. And even if in that sequence there's not a ton of thematic ideas or the interstitial tissue, that stand on its own, but it doesn't take away from it, because there's a lead in and a lead out that make it make sense why we're getting to this moment.
Yes.
But again, I think the problem isn't those sequences. I think the problem is that in between those sequences, we're not setting up enough extra stuff to make that moment feel earned.
It results in weakening those sequences as a result.
Absolutely.
Is that they feel like an island.
Yeah.
I think they feel embarrassing, frankly. I mean, there's no better way for me to put it than that. I think the problem is, like, I'm not going to laugh just because the cat's eating a person. If it's completely contextless, okay, fine, the cat, we know that the cat can eat people, whatever. But for as an audience member, this is not a film I can buy into.
Mhm.
It's a film where suddenly everyone's being eaten on a ship because the ship is under attack from something that
Cosmic waves out in space.
Cosmic waves or something. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
I just think that we should want better than this, and we all do,
Of course.
But it just makes it hard for me to view this as anything other than an extremely cynical product when the behind-the-scenes drama makes it very clear that there's a lot of interference here.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine if Nia DaCosta got her movie and we saw a proper cut of this film, it would be a lot better.
Yeah.
Because there are good ideas, but I can't commend good ideas when they are just stitched together by something this week. Because they're just falling apart. I think the film falls apart in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
It's making fracking jokes.
That was bizarre. You lost your mind at that one. I looked over you, it was like 30 seconds later and your head's still in your hand.
Yeah.
You took off your glasses
Yeah, I did.
when Monica Rambeau said that.
I just think that there is something interesting about watching a movie this expensive from a studio of this size and this repute be so obviously poor.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with this. It's obviously poor. I don't even think this is a thing where you look at it and you're like, oh, I'm tired of the MCU formula, so this is bad. I think it's this is not even up to the standard that Marvel has set for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's ultimately my issue with it.
Yeah.
I don't have that much more to say about the movie, frankly.
I don't know. I just wrote down. I'm just looking through my notes to see if I wrote anything else down. The whole Carol being like the Annihilator thing is another plot line that is set up, not paid off nearly enough, not given enough lip service, enough time.
Yeah.
And I guess we haven't been really addressing the spoilers at all, which is fine.
We've been talking about spoilers in a vague sense, but let's just do it anyway.
Okay, here's your spoiler warning. So at the end of the movie, she goes back and punches the Kree son, and I have to ask, why couldn't she have just done that the entire time? You know, at a certain point, maybe that's like a CinemaSins thing, but also, if that's going to be like, she's redeemed herself, she went back and she restarted the sun, it has to feel a little bit more substantial than that.
That scene is shot like nothing. Like nothing's happening.
Exactly.
We get a reasonably good animation of the sun like restarting, but there's no dramatic moment of her like charging up and going into the sun and like her fist cresting the surface of this star and then like coming out the top of it. It's like it's a wide shot.
Yeah.
Maybe the widest shot in cinematic history where we're seeing just like boink, she comes out the top of the sun. It is.
Is that delivered? Yes, not delivered with any dramatic weight.
It's very perfunctory.
No. Yeah.
There's. I think the dramatic weight is really what's lacking here. I think I felt enough comedy here. I think I felt enough kineticism, which are two of the things I mostly come for in these movies. But I also come for the drama that comes from the fact that these characters are wacky, but put into intense situations where the fate of the universe is at
World-ending
stake.
situations. Yeah.
But the drama is what sells these movies. It's Tom Holland beating the crap out of Willem Dafoe or Iron Man dying at the end of Endgame. Like these are moments that stick with me.
Yeah.
That could be a moment where Carol Danvers like struggles with herself and realizes that she can do this, even for a people that she's had conflict with. And then like pushes herself to the edge of her powers. Yeah. But instead,
I think it's also just sort of a bummer because the big operatic dramatic stuff is great, but I think there is some real heart here in when after the Kree memory like apparatus is taking off, and the justification for that happening is that Brie Larson didn't mean to do it or whatever.
Oops. Yeah.
When Monica Rambeau breaks down and then Kamala Khan comes and hugs her and then waves.
Good moment. Very good moment.
And then waves Carol over and then they're all hugging. That's great. Or even just watching Carol Danvers become like a mentor figure for Kamala Khan by the end of the film. I think that there is really good heart just between characters. And I really like that. I mean, that is one of the things I definitely do like about this film, 100%. But the movie wants to be so much bigger than its best parts. Yeah. When the characters are allowed to have fun together and jump rope or get to be super badass in these fun but ultimately small scale action sequences, that's really cool.
Small scale.
But this is a film that, again, to the point about this being pretty embarrassing, I feel, that final trailer, which I feel is worth addressing.
Yeah.
That is entirely Avengers footage, setting the Marvels up like it's something of consequence. I can't see a single way in which this is a film of any importance.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting is, so for the context of what this means for the larger MCU, there are two rather important things that are established
Mhm.
in this film, which is Kamala Khan is now setting up a Young Avengers, and she meets
True.
with Kate Bishop, and we don't know what that means in terms of what other characters will
I
be
like
on
that
the team.
we're doing the Nick Fury thing. It's very fun.
It's a
It's
great
cute.
bit.
It's
It's
very
a
cute.
good scene. It's a
Yeah.
great bit. It's great for Kamala. It's great for, frankly, a lot of my favorite characters, and hopefully what their future
Yeah.
is.
We also really like Hawkeye. That's a great
and,
show.
and Kate Bishop's in this.
Kate Bishop
and
is great.
She has,
I'm putting together a team of young Avengers. I'm 23.
and also, Monica Rambeau is in a parallel universe where
Yes.
the X-Men exist, and what that means is like so vague
We
and
gotta
so
go get her.
strange that is who the hell knows how that's gonna. But I'm mildly interested in seeing how that pays off. But these are two things that are pretty large scale, but they are handled as addendums. They're not handled as this is a continuation of something that we really saw set up in this film, and the momentum carries forward, and the projects are coming soon, and we know what they are, but we don't, and we don't know when there will be a Young Avengers.
We don't know if.
when we're going to see any of these characters, or if we can assume that these are plans for significant things in the future, but the problem becomes that they are not connected to the Marvels as a story,
Yeah.
other than the fact that for whatever reason the bands, the Bangles, which we still don't know where they come from, who the hell knows, can punch holes in reality, which I can buy, but because we don't know where they come from, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then so she finally punches a hole in reality, and then Monica has to fix it, and then that's the reason why we're now seeing X-Men and why there's parallel universe stuff. It feels like slacked on to the end of it.
It clearly is.
Yeah,
that's the thing about it. It's obvious.
At that point, I said this about, a film that is only marginally more expensive than this one, Avengers Age of Ultron, is that it feels like a stepping stone, and this one feels like a stepping stone in 6 different directions, as opposed to just a stepping stone to Civil War or whatever.
Yeah.
This is like we have a bunch of other stones in front of us, and we're like trying to hit all of them at the same time.
Yeah, I still don't even know if I agree with that, because I think here's the difference, right? Age of Ultron is a very flawed movie, but there are character relationships that have progressed that end up mattering.
That's fair.
In that film.
Yeah.
You could release that post-credit scene with Beast on Twitter, and you get the point across. Marvel could go on Disney Plus right now and upload that meeting Kate Bishop scene as like a little stinger for Hawkeye, and it gets the point across.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the movie. And ultimately, like, I want to see something happen of substance in the context of the film that isn't just a breadcrumb, to your point, Tanner, for something that may or may not happen.
Yeah.
I want to see, like, verifiable character progress that even if this is the end of these arcs, I feel like we've moved someplace.
Yeah.
But we haven't, because we know that Beast thing was a breaking case of fire thing filmed on
We
the
gotta
Frasier
get the
reboot
X-Men in
set.
here. We gotta.
Yeah.
We talked about I do wanna give equal time here, at least the attempt at it. We talked about Carol, we talked about Kamala.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything to say about Monica, who's given? We said Carol was given the least to do, but Monica was also maybe given the least to do.
Yeah.
Except now she's chucked into the X-Men universe.
That's bizarre, but I think that the reason why I feel like Carol is given the least to do isn't because the story is less about her than it is Monica, but where I feel that Monica filled the role that I expected her to have.
That's
Carol
fair.
Danvers. I felt I was expecting to have a much bigger role in this universe and have a little bit more explained, a lot more character moments, and she doesn't. But I feel like Monica Rambeau, as a side character that was established earlier and is carried through the plot of the first movie, and her character conflict is a direct continuation of the things we saw set up in that first movie. I feel like she serves her role adequately. I think Teyonah Parris is good in the role. I think she has a interesting, like, commanding presence, but also this sort of softer side where she's like unsure of how to react to Carol. I think it's a pretty interesting direction for that character. And she's the straight man out of this group.
Yeah.
And so I think that Teyonah Parris and Monica Rambeau are exactly what I thought they were going to be.
Sure.
So I'm not disappointed in the fact that she's not like a much bigger part of the film. I think she's a side character with some good moments and some relatively interesting plot points, but that's kind of it.
Well, yeah, and it's just, it's a microcosm of the things we've been talking about, but, like, Carol hadn't been back to Earth, and she's mad at Carol because she never came back, and stuff like that. But I have to say that those feel undermined in context of what Carol was doing. She's like, "We needed you, Carol. We needed you back on Earth. You never came back." I was like,
Well, she did actually.
She did actually when Monica was blipped after all. But you have to know, and Carol, she's doing this, and after all the Avengers and everything, she's like. She's out there she's out there saving trillions of people and solving the problems of hundreds of thousands of planets. And it just makes Monica feel selfish in that moment.
Kinda, yeah.
I just feel like Teyonah Parris does a totally good job with the material, but I think that the character Monica Rambeau is a great example of how the storytelling of the MCU is just not working.
Yeah.
Not only in the context of this film, but like, I didn't watch WandaVision, so I didn't know I don't have any context to this character.
Of course.
We just keep hearing that she walked through a witch hex, and I have to just try to imagine what a witch hex is.
Yeah.
Her powers are largely nondescript.
Yeah.
She fires the equivalent of like the fucking Sentinel beam from Halo Infinite. It's like I just don't get it. I feel like I'm missing context.
Sure, you are.
But like they don't make any attempt to try to smooth that over.
No,
they don't make any attempt.
And again, that's because the movie's just cut so short that there's not the time to
they also hinge the relationship on this backstory for Carol that is because
underdeveloped.
Because the problem is the reason Carol didn't want to go back home is because she thought Monica Rambeau would be ashamed of her because she became the Annihilator.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah.
But the problem is again because this universe is so unwieldy. I watched that as a casual fan, although I'm the only one wearing a Marvel shirt this evening.
We're both hacks.
I'm like, oh, this scene that I'm watching here must be a sort of Batman v Superman, Man of Steel style footage from a different angle.
When we see Carol go to Hala and blow up the Supreme Intelligence.
Yes, the biblically accurate Supreme Intelligence.
The one that's not Annette Bening, the giant green face.
And this is
actually the Annette Bening was a projection.
That's a good point. Okay.
Who presented as a human being, who was also the person that trained Carol Danvers.
Yeah, of course.
Because that made it understandable to her mind.
Yeah.
It's not actually a retcon. I see it on your notes that they retcon that betting. It's not sure.
It's not a retcon. Technically, it's
the Supreme Intelligence would project someone that looked like that person to anyone that it
looked like Academy Award nominee Annette Bening.
Yes.
This is sort of a meta conversation, but I think this is a really good example of a movie that is not comprehensible to an average viewer. And I am closer to an average viewer than you guys are.
100%.
And this is a larger Disney problem because there's this quote going. This is a non sequitur, but a quote going around about Thrawn and the Chiss ascendancy.
I saw that.
What did you say?
The Chiss ascendancy.
This is what people feel like, Tucker. That's what people feel like.
And I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I love Star Wars, and I think ultimately the Marvels, Ahsoka, all of this Disney material is circling the same drain of we've gone too far.
We're too far down the rabbit hole.
We're too far down the rabbit hole.
No, I definitely agree, and I think the disconnect becomes I'm in the rabbit hole, and I kind of like being in the rabbit hole and getting to the point where I can have a conversation on a review about the fact that it's actually not a retcon because it kind of makes sense when you remember back to things. I love that. Yeah. That's what I come to this for. Frankly, that's my favorite kind of storytelling. I adore the interconnected storytelling of all this. And I'm not saying this movie pays that off, but I'm saying it really helps my personal enjoyment of watching this film and being able to connect things because I do care and I do know. And I frankly I'm not held responsible for the fact that they should be allowing this to be more accessible to more viewers, but if it makes sense to me, I'm like fucking great.
And listen, and that's fine because like there are many.
I'm not saying it's not a problem.
No, yeah, here's
the
good
thing for me.
But here's the thing: it's fine. That's a good thing for you. And she's climbing all sorts of things over there. But sorry, let me say, there are high concept sci-fi things, Avatar, Dune, that do incredibly well that people love. Yeah. And the reason those work is because they ground them in good storytelling, not nerd shit storytelling, and it's fine. You can fit that into the context. But Tucker, I'm glad that you can come to these movies for that. But you need to ground it in competent, basic storytelling. You can fill it in with whatever Supreme Intelligence. Actually, she's projecting Academy Award nominee Annette Bening, whatever. You can fit all that in there, but you have to lay the groundwork of character arcs and setup and payoff and solid ideas that are
Absolutely.
present throughout the film.
And that is why this is a lower tier MCU
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Because I feel like most MCU movies have done a good job
Yeah.
of what you're talking about. When we talk about the character progression of someone like Peter Parker
Mhm.
or Iron Man or
Mhm.
Captain America, these are characters that we track, that we know, and we can believe their progression.
Mhm.
And they make them, for me, some of the best stories told
Yeah.
in film. But this is not one of those.
Of course,
Because Carol Danvers has a rushed and incomplete backstory.
Mhm.
And the character conflict and the larger plot and the villain are perfunctory at
Mhm.
best. And this that makes it a lower tier movie, frankly.
Yeah. I think that this is a bad movie. I think it's an embarrassment to Marvel. I think it's below their standard. And I think that when you can only enjoy a movie on the level you're talking about, it's a fundamental failure.
Yeah, of course.
And it's just a disappointment because this is going to turn into something it shouldn't be. This is going to turn into...
She's flirking around right now.
Yeah.
We are driving Petra up a wall with how long we are dragging out the Marvel's review.
This is going to become, unfortunately, a free pass for misogynists and racists to jump all over Marvel.
Hey, if you're going to say any of that shit, get the fuck out of our comment section, frankly.
It's just frustrating that these are the characters you fucked up this badly.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the highest level disappointment.
Yeah.
Kamala Khan deserved better. Don't let Iman Vellani's future in Hollywood, in blockbuster films, be dictated by the fact that a bunch of people in the boardroom couldn't write a coherent script.
Yeah, I agree.
And don't blame on Nia DaCosta, because you're fucking dumb if you do.
Yeah. She was probably the best part, making the best part of these movies.
Yeah.
Of this movie. The creative ideas, those interesting sequences.
Yeah.
You can tell there's someone behind there with interesting concepts. But then something happened.
Something happened.
And also, apparently she just left. Like, she wasn't there for, like, post-production and, like, the continuing...
Yeah, but that's Marvel moving the deadline 4 times. That's not on her.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's not on her.
The blame is not on her.
Yes.
Yeah.
4.7 out of 10.
I gave it 2 stars. These scores are arbitrary.
Okay.
It's better 2 stars.
7.3 out of 10.
We'll see it for Deadpool, I think Deadpool is the next thing.
Yeah.
But also for other movies before that.
Yes.
Bye.
3 or 4? Maybe?
Bye.
Wake up.
You ever see those?
Heads.
What are you doing?
Oh no. Please don't.
Oh, God.
Please don't.